Okay, so the recording has started and I will hand over to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nas. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting. The first thing we do is introduce ourselves. I will introduce myself and then ask my colleagues to do so, and officers and the rest of you. I am Gina Adamo, and I chair the licensing committee and licensing subcommittee. May I ask my colleagues to introduce themselves?
Yes, I'm Councillor Yvonne Say from Bounds Green Ward.
I'm Councillor Bob Hare from Highgate Ward.
Excellent. And the officers?
Good morning, I'm Dale Barrett, licensing team leader.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Williams, I'm the legal advisor.
Good morning, I'm Nazia Chowdhury. I am the Principal Committee Coordinator and Clerk to this meeting.
Excellent, thank you very much. And the applicants and I understand we have 3 agents. I don't know if they're all here. Could you please introduce yourselves?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Mike Squire from the Trading Standards Department.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Charlie Shanaike from Haringey Council's Environmental Health and Trading Standards Manager.
Thank you, welcome. And the rest, we have a guest. Perhaps the guest will introduce himself first.
My name is Hassan Kalaskan. I'm from the licensing.
Okay. And then the rest, I can't see many people. So if the licensing holder is here or the representatives of the licensing holder, perhaps introduce themselves.
Good morning, madam. My name is Robert Sutherland, and I'm acting for the premises license holder. Can I just indicate that I'm in the same room as the to apologise as Mr. Kaliskan, and also with Mr. Mehmet Aydemir. There's a terrible echo at my end. I'm hoping that you don't have a similar echo at your end.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam, can
Yes.
I also just take this opportunity, if I may, that whilst Mr. Mehmet Aydemir is present, it was hoped that Mr. Turan Aydemir would be present. He, as you were aware, holds the license and is also the designated premises supervisor. However, due to ill health, he is not able to be present this morning.
Okay, thank you. Is there have I missed anybody? Please speak up, introduce yourself if I have. No.
Charlie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay.
Charlie did introduce himself. Okay.
We've got Simon Allen.
I can't see the Simon, but if he's there. Please.
Hello. Yes, I'm a reporter based at the Haringey Community Press.
Welcome. Thank you. And I think we have all introduced ourselves. Can I bring to your attention that the obligation is an obligation withdrawn from the agenda? So I just brought that to your attention. This is for the classic. So if you got the papers, you could see that. So please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available for public viewing. Any apologies from us? I don't think we have.
No.
And we don't have any urgent business, item 4, because this is a special meeting for the subcommittee, and under the council constitutions, we don't take urgent business. And item 5, declaration of interest. Do any members have any declaration of interest? No. And I should say that my ward is Haringey Ward, so I should have said at the beginning. So Haringey with different spelling, Haringey Borough. The summary of the procedure. The procedure for the meeting has been emailed to all participants by the clerk. For the purpose of any members of the public watching, we will first hear from the licensing office. After that, the applicant will present their case in the committee and an applicant will have the opportunity to ask questions. Then the license holder will present their representation and the committee and objectors will have the opportunity to ask questions. All parties will then have the opportunity to sum up and then the meeting will conclude to allow the committee to deliberate and reach a decision. This decision will then be provided in writing within 5 working days. Okay, and now I think we're ready to start. Can I ask the licensing officer, please, to present your report?
Thank you, Chair. Can I just, before I start, Chair, can I just highlight that we've just received a document from Mr. Sutherland's office, which is a summary of conditions they're saying that has been agreed with the trading standards officer. I believe Nazia has a copy also, so I don't know if that's able to be circulated to members at this time, but the legal officer will also have a copy as well when you go off for deliberations.
May I clarify, this is all the recommendations in the papers already, isn't it? I can't remember what page it is now. It's about 19 recommendations, yeah?
Sorry, Chair, I've not had the chance to go through it to cross-reference if there's been any changes to what's already in the report, I'm afraid, because it's just arrived. So that's why I'm highlighting it now, so you know that it's there.
That's fine, thank you.
Maybe it's something Mr. Sutherland is able to speak to when he speaks and he addresses at the panel. Okay.
I certainly can, Madam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So the panel have before them today an application brought by Trading Standards, a review application against Oz Sultan at 348 High Road, Wood Green, N22, and this is based in the Woodside ward. The review brought by Trading Standards relates primarily to the objective of the prevention of crime and disorder, but also concerns the protection of children from harm. The panel has a copy of the application in Appendix 1 to the report. The matter concerns 2 incidents at the premises, the first relating to Underage Sale on the 4th of August, following a Trading Standards test purchase exercise, and the second incident involves the discovery of non-duty paid cigarettes and hand-rolling tobacco on the premises following a visit by officers of Trading Standards Service assisted by the tobacco detection dogs on the 20th of October 2021. The Trading Standards officer is able to obviously set out the details of this when they address the panel. The premises license holder and the DPS is Mr. Turak Ademir, and the premises has got the ability to do the supply of alcohol as shown at appendix at section 1.3 of the report here. And there is also a copy of the license at appendix 2. There is supporting documents at appendix 3, which Mr. Ademir, the licensing agents acting for Mr. Ademir had submitted in defence of his actions. I think these showed some training that was undertaken, as well as an incident recording and that sort of thing as well, which was also shared with Trading Standards at the time. In terms of the consideration by the committee, once you've heard from all parties, the options available to the committee could be to modify the conditions of the licence or to exclude a licensed activity from the scope of the licence, or remove the named designated premises supervisor. It could also be to suspend the licence for a period not exceeding 3 months, or to revoke the licence. Obviously, all decisions made have clear reasons as to how that decision was arrived at, and they are then subject to appeal through the Magistrates' Court. In terms of background, the existing premises licence was transferred to Mr. Ademir in July 2020. A copy of the licence is available in the pack. The review application does relate to the prevention of crime and disorder. And And Chair, just to highlight in terms of licensing policy, in such cases, a number of reviews may arise in connection with crime that is not directly connected with licensable activities. For example, the sale of contraband goods. The subcommittee does not have the power to judge the criminality or otherwise of any issues. The subcommittee's role is to ensure the promotion of the crime prevention objective. That's in the guidance at section 1124. There are, however, certain criminal activity that may arise in connection with licensed premises.
Sorry, I'm in the meeting at the moment. That's why it took me a moment to answer.
Sorry, Councillor Hare.
Sorry, who was that?
Sorry.
Okay, carry on now.
Sorry, Chair. Can we just establish that Councillor Hare is still in the meeting?
Yeah. Bob, are you still with us or?
He's on mute.
Yeah. Councillor Hare, are you still in the? I mean, I can see you, but I can't hear you. He's obviously speaking to somebody else.
Yeah, Chair, maybe if we could adjourn for a few minutes, because he's not participating in the meeting.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I accidentally switched my microphone off. I'm sorry. Somebody called me and I just answered to say I can't answer.
Oh,
and I've
okay.
switched my phone
That's
off.
fine.
All right. So you are in the meeting, Councillor.
I'm in the meeting. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Please
Chair, we can
carry on
continue.
then. Yeah. We'll carry on then. Thank you.
Thank you. There are certain criminal activity that may arise in connection with licensed premises, which should be treated particularly seriously. These include the use of the premises for the sale or storage of smuggled tobacco and or alcohol, and this is set out in the guidance at section 1127. Where reviews arise in respect of criminal activities, a subcommittee determines that the crime prevention objective is being undermined. It is expected that revocation of a license, even in the first instance, should be seriously considered. And again, this is in the guidance at section 1128. The licensing authority, in determining that what action to take, will seek to establish the cause and concerns, and any action taken will be directed at these causes. Any action taken to promote the licensing objectives will be appropriate and proportionate. And as the panel is aware, Section 17 of the Crime and Disorder Act 1998 comes into play, as does the Human Rights Act, Chair. And there I will leave it, Chair, and allow you to hear now from the applicants for the review from the Trading Standards team.
Thank
Do
you.
you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I was just about to say, are there any questions from members first? No, it doesn't seem so. Your report is very clear. Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the officer from the applicants? I can't see any indications. If not, then we'll move to the trading standards, I think.
Good morning, Chair.
Sorry, who? Oh, yeah.
It's Mike from Trading Standards. As my colleague from licensing said, this relates to two incidents. First being an underage sale, which took place on the 4th of August 2021. On this occasion, a 16-year-old was able to purchase a small bottle of wine from the premises of Oz Sultan. They were served by Mehmet Ademir, who is the brother of the licensee. Mr. Turak Ademir was subsequently interviewed by correspondence, and he stated that Mr. Mehmet Ademir there were no written training records for him in relation to underage sales. So that's the first incident. The second incident took place on the 20th of October 2021. On that occasion, Trading Standards officers entered the premises with tobacco detection dogs for the purpose of carrying out an inspection to see if there was any tobacco on the premises. The initial inspection didn't reveal any tobacco. However, there were two safes behind the counter We asked for the keys for the safes, and one safe was open for us, a small safe which didn't have anything in it, and there was a second safe behind the counter. Mr. Mehmet Ademir, who was on the premises, said the safe was locked and couldn't be opened because it was broken. After some discussion and attempts to get the keys or to get the code to open the safe, we deployed the tobacco dog to effectively sniff at the safe to see if there was any tobacco inside, and the tobacco dog indicated that there was. We pulled the safe out onto the shop floor, and a second dog was deployed to see if there was any tobacco in the safe, and the second dog indicated that there was. So we informed Mr. Ademir we were going to seize the safe if he didn't provide us with the key or the code to open it. And after some 20 minutes more of telephone calls, we were still unable to get into the safe, so we had to physically remove the safe back to our office. Mr. Ademir was given 7 days to provide the code for the safe, and eventually the code was provided. Madam, as you can see from the photographs, that when the safe was opened, it was fully stocked with tobacco products, all of which were illegal. The reasons they were illegal, and firstly, they weren't duty paid. Secondly, they weren't in the correct packaging. They weren't in the standardized packaging format with the drab green color, which you see in all tobacco shops. They were the more, also were the more brightly coloured. They also had foreign health warnings, which were not designed for the English market, in that they should have the correct picture and the English language health warnings.
We can't hear you.
Muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, that total value of the tobacco was in the region of £1,600. There were 4,580 cigarettes and over a kilo of hand rolling tobacco. So it can be a criminal offence under the standardised packaging of tobacco products to have these pack these tobacco in the shop without the correct standardised packaging. It can also be an offence under the Tobacco and Related Products Regulations 2016 to sell tobacco with incorrect health warnings. And as my licensing colleague mentioned, it can also be a criminal offence under Section 144 of the Licensing Act to store non-duty paid goods or smuggled goods on the premises. Mr. Ademir was interviewed by correspondence, and the interview is attached to the papers. And effectively, the information given to us was that it was his brother, Mehmet Ademir, who was effectively running a side business while he was on holiday, while the licensee was on holiday. That's effectively what we're told. Madam, we do remain concerned that we were unable to access the safe. And that was one of the main reasons we brought this review, in the sense of we weren't given the code on request, and we had to physically remove the safe in order to examine the goods. Madam, those are the brief facts of the matter. In terms of conditions, I'm sure Mr. Sutherland will help you further, but yesterday me and Mr. Sutherland did speak, and we did broadly agree the conditions similar to ones which are in the papers. Mr. Sutherland wanted some slight amendments, basically to cover the fact the shop is laid out in a different way in the way the tobacco is stored, but effectively the conditions remain the same. There is also an additional condition being added in relation to the availability of keys and codes for any safes or lock rooms at the premises, which Mr. Sutherland has agreed. And Mr. Sutherland himself has further conditions which he has voluntarily added, which further tighten up the regime there. So, Madam, if I can help you further, those are the brief facts in the case.
Thank you. I will take questions. Can I ask you, is also the issue about the underage sale of alcohol, which I don't know if you mentioned it and I missed it. The 16-year-old, saw the bottle of wine. But am I correct in that? And can I also ask you, is it normal in your experience, that business of this size will have two safes?
Yeah, I did mention the underage sale right at the beginning.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I did mention that right at the beginning briefly. It is unusual. Well, it's unusual for a shop to have two safes. Most shops in Haringey, I would say, don't have any safes, but there are some that do. But yeah, it is unusual to have two. But the second safe was a particularly small safe. It was like a travel safe, the sort you get in a hotel room. But yeah, it is. I would say only maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 15 shops even have a safe at all during the inspections I carry out.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions from members first? No? Okay. I can't see I can't see anybody indicate. Are there any questions from anybody else?
Chair, if we could just ask if Mr. Squire could clarify whether or not trading standards are still recommending a suspension of the license, and if so, the reasons why.
Yes.
Yes, madam, we do recommend a period of suspension, and the main reasons for that are with the fact that there's a relatively high value of tobacco was seized, the fact that we were effectively by subterfuge refused access to do a full inspection of the shop by the fact we were misled in terms of the access to the safe by telling us that it was broken. And those are effectively the main reasons what we would consider that the committee should consider a period of suspension, as well as the conditions that have been agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. The committee will have a discussion and consider everything afterwards. Are there any questions? Any other questions? Councillor O'Hare.
Yeah, thank you. 16, is it conceivable that he might have been taken as 18 years old? I'm not wishing to provide any excuse, but 16 does seem close to being 18. But could you just elaborate on whether that in any way reduces the severity of the offence?
Councillor here, I can answer that. It was an underage sale, so the closeness to being 18 or looking 18 isn't really relevant. The person was under 18 and should have been asked for
exactly
for ID.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, absolutely.
Could I also answer that question? The young person was 2 years younger than the age, which is within the code of practice for that we follow for underage sales. And secondly, most shops, including this one, operate a challenge 25 policy.
Yeah.
Whereby anyone who looks under 25 should be challenged.
Yeah.
Now, if they're able to produce their ID, then fair enough. On this occasion, there was no challenge. So even if it was a 16-year-old who looked older, it's unlikely that they would have looked 25.
Yeah.
In case they should still have been challenged, in which case they would have answered correctly for their age.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sutherland, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam. I put my hand up because I'd indicated that I didn't have any questions, and then just following on from the question from your legal advisor, I think it was, there was just something that followed on from that. Whilst talking to you, I'm going to try and put my hand down. That's worked. That's good. Mr. Squire, in relation to Mr. Turak Ademir, would I be right in sort of saying to you that he has cooperated fully with you as soon as he's been made aware of issues?
Yes, it would be correct to say Mr. Turak Ademir has been very frank and forthcoming in responding to my questions. Yes, true.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
If there are no more questions, I come to the applicant, and it doesn't seem to be. Mr. Sutherland, you are the spokesperson, I assume, for the applicant. So when you're ready.
Madam, thank you. Before starting, may I just say that there is an echo. In fact, I think we've managed to deal with it at this end, which is quite off-putting. And so if I do pause, it's probably because I can hear myself 3 times. Some would say it's bad enough just to hear me once, but when you hear me 3 times, it's even worse.
No, we don't have any problem here. I can hear you perfectly well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. That's most kind. Now, in relation to this particular matter, there is a document which I will come to later on. It was referred to by the licensing officer, Ms. Barrett, and it is a set of conditions. There's slight amendments, as has been mentioned by Mr. Squire, and I can take you through those later on. But predominantly, they're very similar to the conditions with an additional 3 conditions. The conditions which were originally put forward, I think, are set out from page 16 in your bundle, 16 to 18. And I would ask that those conditions be replaced by the additional set of conditions set out in the document which has been circulated this morning. And may I apologise that it is so late, but I wanted to make sure that Mr. Squire and myself were content with the wording, and unfortunately I didn't receive his email until this morning. I know he sent it yesterday, but unfortunately I didn't see it until this morning. Madam, dealing with this particular application, again, can I just indicate that Mr. Turak Aydemir apologises that he's not been able to be here. Unfortunately, it is a complication, I think, to a COVID infection that he has been suffering from for a couple of weeks, and it was hoped that he would be sufficiently well to join us, but unfortunately that's not the case. So please do not take anything by his absence. No insult or disrespect is intended, and I hope none is taken. In respect of this particular application, there's a number of reasons as to I will be putting forward to the committee as to why it would be appropriate in this particular case to follow the recommendations of Mr. Squire. Of course, it's open to the committee, as has been indicated by Ms. Barrett right at the start, that you could be considering revocation of the licence, and it's my submission that a proportionate and appropriate response would be a modification of the licence. And I will urge the committee, if they consider that a suspension is appropriate, I will urge the committee to keep such a suspension to a shorter period as possible. The premises is a family business. It's run by Mr. Turak Aydemir and his brother, Mr. Mehmet Aydemir. Other people involved, you'll have seen their names on various different documents that you'll have read, mainly on the refusal register. Songul Aydemir is Turak Aydemir's wife, and there's also reference to a Yasmin Aydemir, and Yasmin is in fact Turak and Songul's adult daughter. Between the 4 of them, they operate the premises. It is, I would probably describe it as an off license with some additional goods which are sold, but it predominantly this premises is more of a traditional approach in relation to an off license, and that the focus is very much on the alcohol. Which again is one of the reasons that I would put forward to the committee that any suspension of the license for any period will substantially affect the business, purely because it is very reliant upon the alcohol sales. Now, it's my submission, Madam, that there are 7 reasons as to why the matter can be dealt with as proposed by Mr. Squire. And first of all, the 2 instances which have given rise to the review, one, the underage sale, and secondly, the in relation to the illicit tobacco, both issues have arisen due to the actions of Mr. Mehmet Aydemir. He has set out a statement which is contained within your agenda papers at page 53. And he has set out there that he apologizes, is sorry for what he's done, and for the actions that have put the family business in jeopardy. And on the last paragraph, he says, I've committed to do all that is necessary to reassure everyone involved that this was a one-off bad phase that I went through. Doesn't define the character of a 45-year-old who's always done things the right way. My duty and my wish is to prove it in action. Mr. Mehmet is initially did not assist Mr. Squire. Mr. Squire's been very clear on that. However, when Mr. Turak Aydemir returned back to the business, returning from Turkey, and learnt of the circumstances, he very quickly took control and ensured that the appropriate information was provided to Mr. Squire so that the safe could be opened. He also made it clear to his brother that the behaviour was unacceptable, and that therefore they had to hold their hands up, and has made frank admissions. You've seen his interview under caution, and he has been very frank and open. He also ensured a document that you've not seen, but I think Mr. Squire has made reference to it in his application. The interview under caution for Mr. Mehmet Aydemir repeats and reinforces, I think, what Mr. Turak Aydemir says, and Mr. Mehmet Aydemir fully accepts his responsibility for the situation in relation to the illicit tobacco being on the premises. That's the second reason that I put forward as to why the license may be modified, and if there is to be any suspension, that it be kept to a minimum, in that they have admitted that things have gone wrong, and they have worked with trading standards in order to put those right. As I've indicated, the person who's been dealing with the matter in detail and has been dealing with the license holder and his brother is very much Mr. Squire. And from his vast experience in these matters, he, of course, is inviting the committee to modify the license and to suspend the license. So again, I would pray that in aid of such an action. What has the license holder done in order to address the problems which were highlighted in respect to the 2 instances in August and October of last year? And the first thing that the license holder has looked to do is that you'll have seen from the interview under caution in relation to the age issue that arose in August, that he indicates that, well, I've done the training in the past, that may not have been as ideal, may not have been as good as it should have been, and on that basis I'm getting in a consultant to deal with it. He refers to Ada Group and Atlas Licensing. There's connections between the two, and certainly the representative from Atlas Licensing is present at the hearing today, and he has arranged and carried out the training of the 4 individuals. at the premises. Now, in addition to that, you'll have seen within the papers, and it's been submitted, that the Mr. Turak Aydemir and Mr. Mehmet Aydemir have retaken their personal license course to refresh their knowledge, and you'll see that those certificates are set out at page 49 and page 51. They retook the exam in March of this year. So they've addressed the knowledge issue. Reference is made to a Challenge 25 system, and in essence, I think that's been beefed up since this incident. You'll have seen from the photographs both that are submitted as part of the interview under caution, and also submitted by the license holder, that the cigarette display, which is situated behind the till, you'll see clear signage about Challenge 25, no ID, no sale, and that they can't sell tobacco products to anyone under the age of 18. Main photograph, I think, is probably at page 29, though that is a slightly wider photograph you'll see on the subsequent bundle that's been submitted on behalf of the license holder. Photograph 1, in fact, is that same cigarette display, but shows you the till in front of it. So that aspect, I think, the training has been improved, and staff are reminded of their responsibilities. In relation to the involvement of Mr. Mehmet Aydemir, then an additional step that has been adopted by Turak is that his brother has not been allowed to manage the premises and to be responsible for the control of the premises on his own. This is because of the circumstances which led to the cigarette, to the illicit tobacco being stored at the shop whilst Mr. Aydemir was in Turkey. And so he has required that Mr. Mehmet Aydemir is not responsible for the shop on his own whilst Turak is not present. And so he has arranged for either his wife or his daughter to be present in order to make sure that that things are happening as they should. That is reflected in a condition which is on the additional document which you've seen today, and it's condition 22 at the very end, which reflects this state of affairs, in that it says that Mr. Mehmet Aydemir will not be permitted to manage or be in control of the shop or be employed at the premises without appropriate supervision from the license holder, DPS, or other person nominated by the license holder in writing and notified to the licensing authority. So certainly at the moment that operates on the basis that Mr. Turak Aydemir is either present or his wife is present with Mr. Mehmet Aydemir, when the premises is open and selling alcohol. So we've restricted the involvement of Mr. Mehmet Aydemir. In addition, dealing with the age requirement, if I could refer you to photograph 3 of the additional photographs that were submitted and are in the supplementary bundle, you'll see it's not a particularly clear photograph, but I'm hoping that you can see this is actually the till screen, and you can see that there's a hand pointing to a yes and a no, which is just below an information box, which I'm hoping you can just see and make out. Talks about confirming the age because of the product that's being sold.
the product that's being sold. So that's been added to the till system. You'll indicate, or you'll note that when the interview under caution takes place for the age, Mr. Turak Ademir, this is at page 25, 26, Madam, you'll note that question 26 is raised at that stage. Does your business operate a display prompt when age-restricted products are scanned? And at that stage, Mr. Turak Ademir was saying inquiries have been made for this feature to be implemented. Well, those inquiries have been completed, and an age prompt system has been added, as shown in photograph 3. Again, Madam, if I could refer the committee to the set of conditions which was circulated this morning. Condition 21 refers to this, so that that indicates that the till age prompt system will be activated for the sale of all age restricted products. So that addresses the issue in respect of the age too, and makes it a requirement that there is an age prompt system on the till. I've talked about training and how that's been implemented. I have, Madam, if I was present in the room in the olden days, I would have been able to show you, but you probably won't be able to see it very clearly on the screen. But there's a folder which has been prepared by Atlas Licensing, which sets out obviously the training material and all the other requirements, sets out the record for the training and when the training needs to be refreshed. Training was provided back in August, I think, of last year, and then was refreshed again in November, and in part has been refreshed in March. The final point that I wish to make, Madam, is I wanted to take you, if I may, through the set of conditions document. Now, I've indicated to you that the conditions are substantially the same, and I can highlight the small differences which just reflected, or was seeking to reflect, I think, the operation at Os Sultan. So we have the first condition is adopting a Challenge 25 policy. You've heard the benefit of that from Mr. Squire, and also Councillor Hare has raised the issue about people who are close to 18 looking as though they may be over 18. Of course, the Challenge 25 system addresses that comprehensively. And in those circumstances, of course, identification would be required. We then have the refusals register should be maintained to record instances. Now, you'll have seen in the papers already in the response to the interview under caution for the age matter. There is an extract taken from the refusal register, that's at page 27, 28 of your bundle. That takes you up to the 9th of August. You'll have seen, Madam, that on the additional papers in the supplementary bundle, in essence, I've carried it forward so that you've got the pages which follow on from August. So you've got the end of August, and they take you all the way through to March of this year. So that the refusal record, the refusals register is being maintained, and obviously those records are made available for inspection by the police and authorised council officers on request. That condition, if I can just take these slightly out of order, links into condition 6. So if I could ask you just to jump ahead to condition 6. one of the changes was that condition 6 referred to a refusal book. In this particular case, the system is moving into a loose leaf system, which will be retained within or past sheets will be retained in the licensing folder that I've just sort of indicated to you. Technically not a book, more of a register. And so to keep the language consistent, I changed the reference to book to register as it was in condition 2. So that was really one of the minor changes that we've made. But all the other requirements set out there remain, so that the record for alcohol and age-restricted products is maintained, and the requirements as to what needs to be recorded. There was an additional sentence at the very end of condition 6, which in fact was a duplication effect of condition 2, in that the records had to be made available to the police and authorised counsel on request. And I've just deleted the reference to that because it was already contained within condition 2 and therefore wasn't necessary to be repeated. Moving back then to condition 3, there were no changes to this. This was as was proposed by Mr. Squire. So all staff responsible for selling alcohol shall receive regular training in requirements of the Licensing Act 2003 and all other age-restricted products stocked on the premises. Obviously, that training records are retained and they are made available to the police and to authorised counsel officers. Condition 4, posters being displayed in prominent positions around the till, advising customers of the proof of age scheme. You've seen that, that's the case from the photographs. There are also additional age posters positioned at various places around the premises and also at the entrance to the premises. So again, it's repeating the fact that there is a Challenge 25 policy in place. Condition 5 is ensuring that only employees who've been trained, of course, are able to carry out age-restricted sales and be behind the counter. As I've indicated to you, it's a family business and the people who work there are members of the family. All of the members of the family have received that training and those training records will be maintained. Condition 7 deals with ensuring that alcohol is purchased from a registered wholesaler, and that, of course, is the case. Condition 8 reinforces that and ensures that there's no obviously stock swaps or any purchasing of alcohol from anyone other than an AWRS registered supplier. And then the receipts are retained for a period for 6 months on the premises. A copy is retained, and again, that ensures compliance in relation to the purchase of the alcoholic products. The ultraviolet light has been purchased and is already in the store so that they can check on the UK duty paid stamp. Mr. Turek Aydemir, Mr. Mehmet Aydemir, as I've indicated to you, do not wish to be known for or be thought of the premises as operating outside of the law, and therefore, yes, if they do become aware of any non-duty paid items, whether that be alcohol or even cigarettes, then they will certainly inform the council of that. Only alcohol which is available for retail sale will be stored at the premises. Yes, of course, that's agreed and will be complied with. The next change was in relation to the tobacco products, and you'll note from the photograph of the premises, which is number 1 really on the sheet, on the supplementary bundle. The actual storage for the cigarettes is relatively small. It looks quite big when you see it on the photograph taken as part of the interview under caution at page 29. However, it isn't that big, and it is quite small. So in relation to the tobacco, tobacco stock is stored in that cabinet, which is appropriate and quite right that it should be. But also additional tobacco stock, legitimate tobacco stock, is stored on a display shelf underneath the counter. Now, although I call it a display shelf, it's really just an organizing shelf so that the staff can see what cigarettes they have in order to be able to sell to the customers. This condition was just amended so that it reflected the fact that, quite appropriately, legitimate stock was also stored out of sight of the customers, but in an accessible place so that they could be sold. And so that deals with conditions 13, 14, and 15, so that all tobacco products which are not on the covered tobacco display cabinet or on the under-counter shelf marked for tobacco stock should be stored in a container clearly marked tobacco stock. This container shall be kept within the storeroom behind the sales counter. So what that is looking to address is the situation where obviously any cigarettes which are on the premises for sale are in an appropriate place, and it prevents any arguments about, well, that item isn't for sale, if it's because it has to be kept in an area where it is clearly marked. Condition 14 deals with this issue about the sales counter and the under-counter shelf marked for tobacco stock, and obviously enables legitimate sales to take place only from those areas. And condition 15, of course, requires that only tobacco which is available for sale can be stored on the premises, all of which are agreed. 16 deals with the DPS checking the refusals book and marking it so that it's clear that the refusals book has been inspected. 17, of course, deals with the requirement that if there have been any breaches, that they will attend a requirement to attend a meeting with the appropriate officer from the council. In this particular case, as I say, Mr. Turak Edemir, and I'm anticipating it's mainly down to the COVID restrictions, etc., that things were conducted in a written format by letter. Had it been appropriate or necessary to attend a meeting, Mr. Turak Edemir would have been there and would have met Mr. Squire in person. So there's no difficulty, obviously, in agreeing that condition. The CCTV system acts as an auditor, I suppose, and as a safeguard to ensure that we are complying with all the terms and conditions, as well as addressing any problems that may arise at the premises. And obviously condition 19 indicates that staff are able then to provide copies of any recordings should that be required by the police or by the licensing authority. Condition 20 was referred to by Mr. Squire and wasn't in the original, but clearly when we were discussing the case and the conditions, is an appropriate condition to be placed onto the license in the circumstances of this case. Certainly, Mr. Turak Edemir did not condone, did not agree with, and address the point when he returned to the country. But condition 20 makes it again very clear that if there is a lock safe and there is a safe on the premises, that is that is accessible I think there was reference made, I think, to 2 safes, which was unusual. I think the reason there were 2 safes on the premises was that there was an old safe, which I think is the smaller of the 2, wasn't working, and then they replaced it. But in any event, condition 20 addresses the point of the not being able to access. Condition 21 and condition 22, I've already mentioned to you. They are put forward by the license holder as being appropriate and proportionate. They are steps which we are putting forward as promoting the licensing objectives, and it's on the basis of those matters which I've gone through and the basis of the conditions which I've put forward that I would urge the committee to modify the license as has been agreed with the terms with Mr. Squire, but that if there is to be a suspension of the license, I would invite the committee to keep that suspension to a minimum. I would suggest 2 to 3 weeks, as a lot of these things which have already been referred to have already been implemented. If I can assist the committee further.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been very helpful. You go through all the recommendations. Can I ask my colleagues, councillors first, if they have any questions? Councillor O'Hare.
Thanks, Chair, for spotting my hand, which just seems so much easier than the yellow hand. Okay, I have got a note of a few questions. Just put a comment really to Mr. Sutherland, which is that although Mr. Ademir was abroad when the visit with the dogs took place, there'd been a number of visits prior to that and reports which had caused concern for licensing, and presumably in those several preceding visits, I think June was mentioned for one of them, an honest disclosure was not made by Turak Ademir. It's just a comment from what I read in the reports. And I just wonder if I appreciate all of the disclosure and the frankness, but it does concern me that it was a very long period over which presumably tobacco was or could have been available, given that there were alerts that were going through to Michael Squire or his colleagues. I just wonder whether you've got a comment or a response to that.
So I note what you say, but in relation to all the previous visits, my understanding is that there was no illegal tobacco discovered on the premises, and certainly Mr. Turak Ademir was not aware of any intelligence that is touched on by Mr. Squire. It's not known to me. There's nothing within the papers which indicates where the intelligence has come from, the reliability of it. It's certainly obviously intelligence which Mr. Squire is entitled to and did take action on, but there's no, I would say there's no evidence that before October there was illegal tobacco being made available at the premises. Certainly I'm not aware of anything, and there's nothing within the papers to suggest that.
Okay. I think I've got a further question. I think my other questions are for officers. So I'm not sure from the chair when the chair would like me to ask officers those questions. They do relate to what we've been hearing.
It's very difficult to make an assessment because I don't know what your
Okay.
questions are.
Okay.
I mean, are the questions regarding the officers report?
Okay. Well, I'll just go through them because they are things.
Ask your questions and I will get advice.
Okay. So I wanted to ask about the nature and size of warning signs laid down in the regulations. How would compliance with the new conditions be confirmed? I just wonder whether an age prompt system on a till could become over routine, just so routine that because every item in the shop is likely to need it. A loose leaf page, it would be very easy for a page to go missing, and I just wonder whether a book with a number of pages or simply a book would be acceptable. I don't know what the routine process is for shops that do need to have a 25 challenge. And yeah, that's I just wonder also whether officers think the records shown are the examples, the photograph, whether that meets the standards they want. So those are the questions, and they're really for officers, I think.
Okay, it's some of the questions you could have asked earlier on, I think. But
Oh, I'm very sorry.
Nevertheless, I will ask advice from officers of the legal. Michelle?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, the questions are out of the normal order.
Yes.
But I think officers should be able to answer the questions and should answer them.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes. Can I ask the officers to respond in that case?
I'm happy to respond to some of the points.
Okay.
Firstly, it might be helpful for clarification in response to the councillor's initial comment in terms of the intelligence received. We did receive intelligence on the 29th of June and the 17th of September in relation to the fact that a report was received that illegal tobacco was being sold at the premises. It is important to stress we did not visit during that period. In fact, we delayed our visit until the dogs were available. So there wasn't actually a period where we approached the shop in that time.
That's really helpful, because I suppose it was just an element of concern that you'd visited and hadn't been shown the safe, even if you'd asked.
We had visited prior to that.
Yeah.
And obviously, Mr. Ademir wasn't always the licensee. There has been previous visits, but he has been involved in the shop for the last 10 years by his own comment he's made in his interview. So there was a period where he's been involved and not involved over the last 10 years, but certainly there hadn't been a visit during that period where the last two reports were received. In terms of the signage, there is a legal requirement to display a tobacco notice in relation to basically saying it's illegal to sell tobacco to persons below the age of 18. That is a legal requirement. There is a stipulated size for that sign. The other signage is effectively voluntary in terms of tobacco sales. So we're reasonably happy that the signage displayed is effectively slightly more than is legally required. Yeah. So it's all a good thing. In terms of the refusers register, the format of it, again, the refusers register is not a legal requirement, but it is a good practice requirement, and it helps with the due diligence system. In terms of a loose leaf system, there's no problem with that, because the advantage of the conditions that we're proposing on the license is that when an officer goes into the shop, they can ask to see the register, they can check it there and then, and they can view it and sign it to see if it's adequate. The officer can then make a note. So as long as the register is available to be seen, and if there is an incident in the shop, if the register is there and then, it can be checked to see if it's being filled in properly, because it's easy, in theory, it's easy to make up entries after the event, but if the officer goes in and sees it on a particular date, a particular time, and it's made available, they can see what's been going on the previous month. So I don't think a loose leaf system is a particular problem. I'm happy to answer any more questions, but I've actually forgotten what they were. Actually, if you've got any further clarification you want, I'm happy to answer.
That's really helpful. Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
I think the other point was about compliance with the new conditions.
Obviously, the conditions are, once they're agreed, they will be enforced. We have a responsible trader scheme, which the shop is a member, and effectively a lot of these conditions are mirroring voluntary requirements as part of that scheme, and officers do go round to audit the responsible trader scheme. So an officer will go to the shop and will check the refusals book, and will check the other conditions to see if they're being complied with. And obviously if they're not being complied with, when an enforcement visit is done, it will become apparent if for example, if the safe key is not available, or if officers aren't given the correct access and records such as invoices aren't available, then that could become apparent during an enforcement visit.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Can I take questions from the Mr. Sutherland's presentation, please? Yeah, are there any questions?
Sorry,
I
Madam.
was just asking if there are any questions on your report or your presentation from members. No. Can I ask if there's any questions from anyone else? It doesn't seem so. In that case, if there are no more questions, may I ask some people to sum up? Can I ask start with the licensing officer, please? Can you sum up?
Thank you, Chair. I've got no summing up to do, Chair, as I don't make recommendations on this. Obviously, the Trading Standards Officer is asking for the panel to consider agreeing to the conditions and potentially a period of suspension in this regard.
Thank you. Can I ask Trading Standards, do you have anything to add? Would you like to sum up?
Just briefly, obviously we have agreed the conditions, so I think that matter is perhaps off the agenda in a sense of they have been agreed by both sides. We do remain concerned that the shop was operating in a manner where tobacco was being concealed in a safe, and we would put forward that it may well have been particularly done in that way to avoid detection. So we do remain concerned in that, and we would therefore recommend that the committee do consider a period of suspension to reflect that. But that's all I want to say on that.
Thank you. And can I ask Mr. Robertson, would you like to sum up, please?
Madam, if I may also just very briefly address the questions from Councillor Hare, which I know were dealt with by Mr. Squire, but it may also help if I just respond to those and then quickly move on to summing up. In relation to the compliance checks, I think Mr. Squire has indicated obviously that officers do attend from time to time. In addition, of course, there is the CCTV, which records for 31 days, and it is possible, and officers do check the CCTV system when they attend the premises in order to check on refusals or to check with in relation to compliance, and they can look at the CCTV for a particular date, for a particular time, in order to carry out spot checks. That is present. The in relation to the loose leaf page, operators often find it more helpful, as Mr. Squire has indicated, because then you've just got one page which is close to the till, which is where it's really needed for the instances where there's refusals. so it's helpful from that point of view. It is seen, as Mr. Squire has indicated, as part of the due diligence process. The other part of the due diligence process, or a thing which would be expected, I think, by many courts if they were looking at a due diligence system, is the age prompt on the till, and it's an additional reminder to a staff member to carry out that check to make sure that that the individual is over age or has produced the appropriate identification. You can't proceed without pressing it, and therefore it is helpful from that point of view. Moving on to summing up, if I may, Madam, as I've indicated to you, I think there were 7 things which I've set out as to why it would be proportionate and appropriate in this particular case to modify the licence, and if a suspension was to be imposed, that be kept to a minimum. The first point I indicated was identifying, I suppose, the problem, identifying what the cause of the issue was. That is Mehmet Aydemir. Secondly, once Mr. Turak Aydemir has become aware, he has admitted the situation and has sought to work with the Trading Standards Officer. Thirdly, on the basis of that cooperation from Mr. Turak Aydemir, the Trading Standards Officer is requesting the modification of the licence and a suspension as being appropriate and proportionate in this particular matter. Fourthly, we have sought to restrict the involvement of Mr. Mehmet Aydemir. Fifthly, we've installed the till prompt, which I think is of assistance in promoting the licensing objectives and ensuring that persons underage are not able to purchase age-restricted products. Sixthly, we've introduced or extended and improved the training regime and the records kept, and of course that's reflected in the conditions. And finally, is really looking to those conditions which have been agreed, a comprehensive set of conditions which we say address the problem, the problems which arose last year by restricting Mr. Mehmet Aydemir's involvement, and also assist in relation to the till prompt and the age verification. Taking all those things together, it's my submission that it would be appropriate and proportionate to modify the licence with the conditions put forward. And if the committee feel that it's also proportionate, given that it is an off licence and therefore in essence, a suspension of the licence will effectively mean that the premises is not able to trade for a period of time, I would invite the committee to keep such a suspension to a minimum period, and I would suggest in the region of 2 to 3 weeks if you felt it was proportionate to impose a suspension. Unless I can assist the committee further, Madam.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all of you who attend this meeting. Now I will ask you to leave us. The committee will deliberate and our decision which will be provided in 5 working days. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Thank you.